Man, Mega Man Zero 2 by and large is the game that I think many know as the proper starting point to the Mega Man Zero series. As Zero 1 was a box office success when it released in the spring of 2002, the folks at Capcom knew that it was evident to make a sequel, something that would continue to retain the quality of the original game while of course sprucing things up from a gameplay component that would eventually be its selling point when it released in the summer of 2003. Alongside other titles of course, like the Mega Man Battle Network series and Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga. Wait, I think I reset that. And as you probably heard me say this a million times throughout the course of the channel, I grew up with the DS, so naturally, all of those games flew off my radar. My time spent with the Mega Man franchise, as many know out there already, was mainly with the X series thanks to the X Collection in 2005 for both PS2 and the Nintendo GameCube. That and Mega Man Network Transmission surprisingly, which I hope to cover one day alongside the Battle Network game since it's not a bad game in hindsight, but again, that's gonna be for a different point in time. That's already 2 times I mentioned that series, 2 freaking times, that must be a sign. But because of my 4 to 5-year-old self was fixated on the console games and later on a new generation of Nintendo handheld software, that glorious GBA wasn't something I truly cared about, and so the Zero series again did not fully catch my attention until much later in my life. This is why my Mega Man Zero 1 video is the way that it is, since my sentiments with that game aren't as strong as I wished it could have been, because again, this is a solid series and all, and Zero 2 shows in terms of what it can achieve. All of what I feel about Zero 2 will naturally be expanded upon throughout the course of the video, but to kind of start my general thoughts here for a second, I do think Zero 2 is where Zero really made its strides. Zero 2 in terms of its presentation and start there is something that I think builds the foundation for the rest of the franchise. While I enjoyed Zero 1 for the attempt of what it did, trying a half-baked Metroidvania element into a mission structure platformer, I don't know how they were able to do that, Zero 2 decided to hell with that and make things a bit more streamlined. Something you will find no doubt in a traditional Mega Man game, and to get my final thoughts first, though I will reiterate this point later on, this is why Zero 2 is one of my favorite Mega Man games because of how much they improved from the first one. At its core, it's much simpler in its design philosophy, and because of that, it makes Zero 2 a much easier game to play and start your journey when it comes to the Zero series. Throwing that aside for now, we know that with all sequels, there's a story to cover here, so let's head back and see where Zero leaves us after that ending back in Zero 1. It's been a year since Zero defeated the forces of Neo Arcadia alongside its leader Copy X, and as he wanders through the scorched earth to continue on his mission, he is briefly greeted with a nice welcoming present from Neo Arcadia themselves. Dragged back into the life of action once again, Zero proceeds to receive said present in what I can say is the most badass way possible. Look at my dude styling. Tired as hell, but he's ready to give it his all, and this dude just says let's go as a flex. After stomping once again through the entirety of Neo Arcadia's forces and a pass out session later, Zero returns to a newly improved resistance base that is all handled by their newest commander-in-chief, Elpizo, a dude who is hell-bent on ensuring that Neo Arcadia gets what they came for, all while looking pretty damper. On the flip side, Seal also returns, now acting as supporting duty to develop a substitute energy source that, according to her, can make way for peace between Reploids and humans. Yeah, there's an energy source plot device that, spoilers, it won't go anywhere because the series will forget that's even a thing. But this is what Seal is doing though, in this game at least, and so I will leave her to do what she needs to do while I go ahead and read up on my Mega Man Zero history. As Zero returns to active duty as the legendary hero of old, Elpizo decides that instead of waiting for Seal to do her research, he decides to enact Operation Righteous Strike on Neo Arcadia, only for them to respond back with, "But bitch please," as we later see Elpizo on the ground and the return of the 3 Guardians from the first game. And after their little fiasco with the Guardians, Elpizo, instead of owning up to his mistakes, as any leader should do, proceeds to continue to further fuck up as he decides to seek the power of the Dark Elf, which is sealed inside X's physical body back in Neo Arcadia. Merging with the Dark Elf's powers, Zero proceeds to do his usual heroics once more and stops Elpizo, resulting in his tragic death and the reawakening of the Dark Elf, where Zero ponders what he must do in order to save the world once again. Yeah, talk about a plot summary for that one, am I right? Unlike Zero 1, there is a lot more involved here, making it feel more of a continuation of the series plot, which we'll see more of as time goes on. Zero Two is also a much better game because of that, since it actively focused on some of the details that were brushed to the side from the previous one. Neo Arcadia is the center of attention again, but there's more stakes now that we are introduced to a much stronger resistance base and a commander who was once a citizen of Neo Arcadia, wishing the well-being of Reploids exclusively through his intentions and actions. Elpizo, I think, is also one of the more well-written characters of the entirety of the series, as well as Mega Man X, period. Yeah, I know for a lot of people out there, his immediate fuck-up is his biggest character flaw and sort of ruins his character because he doesn't learn from his mistakes and doubles down on his losses, but you also have to understand that he was never really one to learn from his mistakes in the first place. Elpizo serves as the antithesis of Zero, where Zero is calm and methodical like X was, while Elpizo is more brash and overly confident, similar to a Zero before the days of Mega Man X4. From our first encounter with him, he acts all high and mighty because he considers his orders and options to be 100% foolproof, which Zero questions time and again since he believes Elpizo is way over his head. It also serves to act as a balance between the two Reploids and their means of handling the situation, especially when Elpizo decides to recklessly invade Neo Arcadia and get his ass handed to him by the Guardians. Later deciding to harness the power of the Dark Elves thanks to the Baby Elves, Elpizo is continuing where he left off without fully realizing his repercussions. I also know that there are some visual novels and audio dramas out there that lean more into Elpizo as a character, but I think with what we have here is still enough for me to appreciate his character at the end of the day. The rest of the gang here is also just about as standard as they were back in Zero One, though they seem to respect Zero a lot more while also packing a lot more punch this time around. They still have their little snarks with Zero here and there, mainly Leviathan and her seductions, and Fafnir always seeking a duel like it's a cocaine addiction. And Harpuya is more the leader as usual, though now with Copy X gone, he seems more mellow about his position. Of course, he's willing to fight Zero for the sake of Neo Arcadia, but he's very Vegeta-like, where if he has to swallow his pride, he'll swallow his pride, and he does that well enough when Elpizo comes knocking on his door. And then there's the Dark Elf, and okay, I am of the opinion that this entity, what have you, sort of ruins the whole picture regarding Zero as a series and just tying it together with the X series in general, since again, these games are tied to that, lore or otherwise. We learn next to nothing about the Dark Elf until the second half of the game, and what we know about it before that is thanks to the computer you have access to Seals' lab to learn more about Cyber Elves, where it speaks about the Elf Wars that occurred after the events of the Sigma virus once it was finally gone for good. It's a neat little subplot alongside Seals' search for an energy source replacement, but again, much like that little plot device, it also gets quickly brushed to the side. I'm sure that with Zero 3 down the line, we'll probably get a much better explanation about all these things, but with Zero 2 in terms of its origin story, so to speak, it kind of loses its touch because of the lack of intrigue, plus its lack of focus in regards to the overall story. I still think Zero 2 does hold up a lot with its plot because it does feel more narratively driven compared to Zero 1, given how much we even contemplated on the story up until this point. There is a lot to digest for Mega Man fans regarding plot points that if I were to continue any further, we'd be stuck here all day, and I haven't even touched on the gameplay portion of the video either. Mega Man Zero 2 is a platformer and all, and that's mostly what you're here for at the end of the day. As usual, you got the makings of a typical Mega Man formula here, going from stage to stage to beat the usual Maverick of the week, followed by an endgame boss rush and a final boss that, depending on your skill level, I don't judge. Again, the standards are all here, and I guess it doesn't bear much repeating since it's not my first time covering a Mega Man game for the channel, but that doesn't mean Zero 2 doesn't have a few tricks up its sleeves either. Just in case you weren't aware, the 2 is there for a reason, and like many sequels out there, Zero 2 makes no exception of taking what worked with the previous game and overhaul the shit out of what didn't work. Starting with graphics, Zero 2 is much more stylistic in its presentation and animation, allowing the Zero series to fully flourish properly on the Game Boy Advance. You can even see it the moment you boot up the game, as the Z is now coming at you with all that extra political action, much like how the X did back in Mega Man X2 and X3. Or in one of the fights with the boss rush segments with the Beetle Bros, where one is busy fighting you in the foreground and the other one is looking like they're having a rave in the background. Look at homeboy vibing over there. Man, I wish I could do that on my spare time too. Oh, I just died. The colors are much better too, though this arguably can be seen in the original GBA color palette as opposed to the Legacy collection, which is how again I am playing the series in case you weren't aware by both the saturation or the save assist features lurking in the sidelines. I know it's cheating with the damn thing on, but I mean they help decrease burnout when you have these marathons to go through, and I know how a lot of you are pretty salty about me sideswiping Kirby for this series too. Level design is also pretty noticeable because for one, they learned their biggest mistake from Zero 1 and and that being they completely removed the Metrovania hub world design. Zero Two dons the more traditional Mega Man pacing where you pick a stage and go through the motions, making revisits easier should you want to grind for Cyber Elves in this game. It's way faster pacing wise and something that the rest of the series takes into major consideration in their game designs, and I just prefer things to be this way too. Again, not to hate on Zero One's game design, I think it has a bit of charm here and there, but it has an outdated feel, and you can kind of feel this the moment you boot up Zero Two immediately after beating Zero One. I'm also a big fan in the way the stages feel more vibrant and alive compared to Zero One, mainly because we're not going to the same freaking area twice. We have brand new levels for each main boss that's in them, and makes the game feel more high quality because of how much they were able to put on the damn cartridge. I kid you not, sometimes as I was messing around, I legit forgot I was playing a GBA game because the level designs were so expansive and something that you would normally find out of a PS1X game, which is a compliment by the way, it certainly is. They're much longer and have more variety in their presentation, making each stage stand out on their own to a degree that greatly benefits the Zero series identity. Whether it's the forest deep in the Amazons where you have to traverse through these hidden temples to save resistance soldiers, to finding the computer room in the Antarctic where there's robot barracudas jumping out and grabbing your ass because you refuse to learn your lesson, followed by this section of ice physics that, yeah, definitely showed me a good time. An airship that is making its way towards the resistance base where you mad dash your way to the control room to stop its course and have it crash land somewhere else. Or how about this factory with multiple pathways to destroy the generators they have in them that makes for a fun labyrinth when using these movable bombs for hidden pathways. Or even this crystal cave that reminded me of Snail Crystal stage back in Mega Man X2 to go all the way back there. I just like the overall atmosphere of Zero Two brings. I will say that the stages can sometimes be a bit too gimmicky. I mean, for as much as I can give them praise, and they definitely deserve them, sometimes I felt like Capcom was trying to give each stage something unique to show for, but it ended up making things a bit tedious at times. Some are minor inconveniences, like the train stage where you have to constantly duck and head inside the carts to avoid these electrical loops, which sure kicked my ass in a few times simply because I wasn't looking. Or these switches in the aircraft stage where you're not only having to platform your way to avoid these shield assholes, while also not getting zapped a few seconds later because you were knocked back a couple of inches. Ow, what the fuck? But others I have to ask, why in the hell is this even a part of the stage? Because god damn it, man. Shuttle Factory stage with its falling platforms are a nuisance firsthand, as you have to play speedrun with them, and they're placed in areas where it has to drop for a millisecond for you to even cross. And the gimmick in the Crystal Cave stage where you have to hit this floating enemy that shines the path of the respective color, yeah, not a fun time. It's too long and it gets exaggeratedly claustrophobic that you end up losing your footing so much that I ended up dying the most in this stage because of it, despite my nostalgic praise for it. Definitely one of those stages that I'm not gonna revisit anytime soon. Okay, maybe that's a lie. Still, the stage designs in Zero Two aren't really that bad with the gimmicks. It's just that in terms of some of them, they really make you second guess your life choices. Boss fights are also something to highlight in comparison to the previous game. A much better challenge this time and give a bit of a harder time since they're actively bouncing all over the place, making sure they know they got hands to throw and then some. Some of them even have cool set pieces like Anchor Kawangus, is that even his name? I don't even remember. Anyway, the blue beetle has you fighting on top of a smaller airship that's flying away from the crash site, and the whole scenery in the background plus you outmaneuvering him makes for a really cool boss fight because of its lasting impression. Or in the train stage where you're fighting Panther Flockcaws on these two moving carts makes for a more dynamic approach, and you have to move in these shifting platformers that has edges on them that you can fall off if you're not too careful. I even like how depending on which room you destroy the last generator in the power room stage, that's where you end up fighting the boss Phoenix Magian. And if you choose correctly, you'll have one room where there's only two spots where lava will shoot out while he makes a mad dash towards you. Believe me, this is your best bet to even fight the damn Robo Bird, since if you choose the room where the entire floor is essentially lava, yeah, you're not gonna have a good time. The Guardians are no slouches as they got their usual 1v1s with Zero here, now adding more kick to their arsenal thanks to these special attacks they got going. I always love seeing these in action though. It's like they got a Zenkai boost from the last game and only now they're starting to get serious with their fights. Herbuya stands out the most to me in this case because how he's constantly barraging you with his slashes and does this cool trick where he goes super fast in the air and dash across to create this large slash that if you're not careful enough, a huge chunk of your health is going away. Seriously, a personal highlight all around, and they even got got so much beef with Zero in this game that they even transform into these big robot weapons of mass destruction. Look at them go with all that metallic ass on them, becoming nothing but transformers only to tear Zero a new one, all while looking goofy in the process. You truly love to see it. Not as exciting as their previous fights though, but it makes for something different. Though spoilers for the rest of the series, you won't see them pull this hat trick off. Who could blame them, honestly? That must be a lot of work to even transform. Much like the previous game, you got the Cyber Elves returning, and my god, I love how they handled the Cyber Elves here. Because you can go to previous stages like in previous Mega Man games, it makes collecting them easier and even grinding E-crystals, since you don't have to consistently find a spot where it can give you the most crystals, since every stage can practically do that now. It's much more reliable all around, and that's what I love the most about this game too. And much like before, you got your animals, hackers, and health elves back to go find and sacrifice to the mighty Zero God as he regains his health bar to max, increases his mobility, or if you have that little bit of classic fun in you, turn enemies into mets. Yeah, that's a thing you can do starting this game with certain hacker elves, as they will now turn even the most dangerous enemy on sight into one of the most unstoppable forces in the entirety of the Mega Man universe. I'm telling you, that hard hat does miracles. And for the ranking system, since yeah, that is also a thing, you even have these special hackers that increase your rank to an A rank, and for boss fights, this even grants you the ability to gain an EX skill, which is essentially a power up from the previous games. I gotta be honest, I didn't grab all of them, since to me the ranking in these games isn't important to the overall core concept of Zero's gameplay, and is just bragging rights all around. But the ones I did get, well, you know, I did my best to highlight them with their respective weapons. And as for the weapons here, well, they're nothing new either, since you have what you had in the first game. The Buster and Saber are back to upgrade, as well as the Shield Boomerang, which I found more enjoyment and usage in this game for boss encounter and stages. The one weapon that is new among them is the Chain Rod, fully replacing the Triple Rod here. It's a grappling hook basically, but easily one of the worst I've experienced, because my man, what is with the hitbox on this damn thing? It's so jank and doesn't latch onto anything the way one would expect an actual grappling hook to be like in other games, say Super Metroid, and it bothers me because grappling hooks are so damn cool. Like, you can yank items and enemies for the fun of it like your Scorpion in Mortal Kombat, but for traversal, man, this thing is cheeks. Especially in sections where you have to rely on the damn thing. Yeah, I'm not a fan of the Chain Rod here, and I'm glad the rest of the series does away with it. Despite this small issue though, there is an incentive to use all the weapons this time around thanks to the new forms you can obtain for meeting certain requirements, giving Zero a shiny new coat of armor and increasing specific stats. Be it a more faster and efficient Buster Shot like the X form, to more utilization and Saber skills like the Rise form, opting for a Rising Slash as your third Saber strike, or if you're really feeling a bit pretentious, the Erase form, which it makes the Shield Boomerang look like an absolute unit. God, I really did enjoy this weapon this time, didn't I? And when you beat the game and start a new game plus, which yeah, that's also a thing here, you even have this proto form which maxes out all your stats and makes Zero look like he's a shiny Pokemon version of himself. I mean, can you tell the difference? Of course, these aren't all of them, you know, you can always look up a guide later on to see how the other requirements are for the other forms, and as much as I would like to 100% this game, I also know that I don't actually use all of them, since you really only need Zero's normal and X forms most of the time. Still, it does offer a lot of replayability for those who want to nab them all, and it's always fun seeing Zero go all out with these forms and showing that this time around he's not playing and he will pop out and show Reploids, if you catch my drift. But all in all, Zero 2 is a solid experience, and I can argue is even the best time out of the whole series, to the point where it's considered a perfect sequel in my eyes. I know that we have Zero 3 to cover next, and I'm sure many will say that it's the best of the best when it comes to the Zero series, and I do agree, and we'll obviously elaborate more when we get there, but there's something about Zero 2 that makes the series feel a lot more complete, if that makes sense. Like, the story had more of an emphasis, the gameplay is a caliber above the first one, and it refined a lot of what Zero 1 did right, as well as fixed a lot of the errors of what it did wrong, and for me, this is what I consider a game to be perfect. I definitely had a lot more fun playing Zero 2 for like the 5th time, and knowing me, by the time this video is out, I'm definitely going to be replaying it because it's one of the best Zero has to offer, and it's one of the more enjoyable Mega Man experiences that I definitely would recommend should you want to try out the franchise. But this marathon continues, as coming up next we got Mega Man 03, the magnum opus of the franchise, as many out there will like to put it, and honestly for good reasons too, which I'm excited to talk more about in the future here. As always, Thank you so much for the support of the channel. You guys have been giving it so much attention lately, and I'm glad to see that's the case because it shows that you guys really appreciate the content that I've been making, and it also shows that I'm doing my job right as an entertainer, as a content creator, and all that. So thank you. It really means a lot. And as always, love you all to 120. Stay safe and sexy out there. Do good into the world. Remember to always have fun and take.
It seems the Dark Elf has been awakened. The time has come for you to take action now, Omega.
What the hell was that?